Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael and we're going to be getting right back into some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Now, without further ado, let's begin. This story was posted by a throwaway account in 2019. The post is titled, "Tubs of butter are taking up all the room in our tiny fridge. I had no idea this would be the hill I wanted to die on, but here we are." In our office, on our floor, we have a kitchen area with a small dorm-sized fridge. There are 13 of us in our little area. Although with part-time workers and those working from home, 6 to 10 people is more normal most days. The bottom of the fridge is taken up by the office milk, leaving 2 rather small shelves. Often people step out at lunch to do some shopping and fill the fridge afterward, but by that point everyone has taken out their lunch, and it's mostly okay, although sometimes it can be very difficult to shut. The problem is the 6 full-size tubs of margarine and butter. Seriously, of the 13 people, there are 6 of these, sometimes 5, but usually 6. I first brought this up jokingly, saying that it was ridiculous, and a couple of people defensively claimed they were sharing. This is a tiny fridge. With their 6 tubs occupying space, if I am not the first one in, I cannot put my lunch in the fridge. I have started bringing a cooler bag or something that doesn't need refrigeration. I mentioned that each tub is larger than 1/13 of their share of the fridge, and all I get in response is, "But I have toast in the morning." I just think it's so selfish, and I've been as upfront about it as I can be. People just do not see that a full-size tub is too big for a tiny shared fridge. I'm annoyed but not insane. This isn't a management issue, but I would like to understand why their big tubs of margarine take precedence over my lunch. You may suggest that I take up meditation or increase my martial arts training to channel my frustration, but maybe you or the readers have a brilliant suggestion for transforming coworkers into sensitive space sharers. I really like a cold Diet Coke. Update. Thank you for answering my question. Unfortunately, getting a larger fridge was not going to happen. The building manager laughed when I asked, really laughed, like head back, full mirth. Other departments with more people have the same size fridge, so it was never going to happen. Your readers were so helpful though, and it really enabled me to clarify my thinking here. I realized that what I was bothered about was the lack of cold Diet Coke. I could live with a merely cool lunch, but not having that cold Diet Coke felt massively unfair next to their big space-hogging butter. One of your readers also suggested using an emptied butter container for the Diet Coke as well, which pleased me immensely. That way, it wouldn't get knocked over or taken out of the fridge for someone else's lunch. So I have attached 2 photos. First is the Diet Coke in a clean empty butter container, and the second is our fridge when I was first in the office. Mine is the Country Life container front and center. Please note the other 5 butter containers that live in there, as well as the Dairy Lee, which technically is a cheese spread, but I think should count here. For the record, I take the empty container out of the fridge when I've had my Coke at lunch, so if anyone gets some shopping, they can put it in the fridge until they take it home. I'm not a monster. I have cold Diet Coke and feel satisfied at the subterfuge, which allows me to put up with this insanity. Thanks again for the response and reader support. User the Bear of Wisdom said, "I used to bring a metric ton of snacks to work because I couldn't afford real food, so I would eat a giant bag of cheap popcorn all day, or I'd eat a packet of biscuits and a huge amount of tea. I realized how much I hated carrying random snacks all the time, so whenever possible, I would fill my desk cabinet with them. The bottom drawer was always snacks, but I had an aversion to work fridges in general. They always seemed unclean or filled with random items I didn't know what to do with and didn't want to move just in case. There was often moldy food at the back. User Mental Freedom said, "There's a lot of room in that fridge and they could have better optimized the space. It seems like they just chose a hill to die on for the sake of it. Maybe there was a point when things were well packed in and overflowing, but then we should have gotten a photo of that." This next story was made about 3 weeks ago by a user named Akaika. The post is titled AITA for serving divorce papers to my ex at his job the day before he thought he was coming back home. I'm sorry, this is really long. Backstory: I was married to my now ex-husband, whom we'll call Ed, for 10 years and together for 13. I originally met him 40 years ago as a teenager. He was in my circle of friends, but we never dated. We used to live in Florida, but when I was 19, I moved back to Michigan, where I am originally from. 27 years later, I returned to the city in Florida where I used to live to visit friends. I ran into Ed while on vacation and we began talking on the phone daily. 3 months later, he left Florida and moved in with me. 3 years later, we were married. We had our ups and downs, but mainly we got along fine and didn't argue much. He would throw tantrums if things didn't go his way and would punish me by sleeping on the edge of the bed, which was fine with me, or he would not talk to me and slam things. 2 years into our marriage, things went horribly wrong when he got into drugs. It was terrible. One night, I finally had enough and was on the phone with my mother-in-law telling her I was sending him back to Florida when the sheriff's department knocked on my door. Someone had found my husband unconscious and severely beaten in a ditch a block from our house. I raced to the hospital and didn't recognize him when I saw him. He was so swollen and bruised. Now, my husband was a man who could fight. He was strong. Come to find out, it took 3 men to do this. They thought they could rob him since it was payday, but he had been home and purposely left his wallet at home. I sat with him 24/7 while he was in neurotrauma ICU. I slept on a couch in his room. I prayed over him, bathed him, and took care of him even after he came home. This actually saved his life. He got clean and went back to work full time, always putting me and my grandson first before his own needs. He went to work and came home. That's it. 4 years later, I finished my education and became an ordained priest and have been the pastor at my church ever since. At first, he didn't mind, but then he would say things like, "I didn't sign up for this," even though I never pushed church on him. I knew he believed in God and he prayed daily. I would invite him to Christmas and Easter services, and he also came when I was ordained and when my grandson, who calls him Grandpa, was baptized. For several years, things were really good. Then suddenly, he began coming home from work, showering, changing clothes, and leaving. At first, he said it was to watch whatever sports were playing on TV because we didn't have live TV. Then he told me he'd be back whenever he got back. Eventually, things reverted to how they were before. We laughed a lot, joked around, and I began getting the usual kiss goodbye before he left for work. One night, he had done his laundry like he always did while I talked to him as he folded it. He never wanted me to do his laundry, so that wasn't new. We ended the night laughing as he tried on old clothes. The next morning, I woke up and went out to the living room to ask what time he had to be at work, but he was gone. I assumed he had to be there early. I walked back into the bedroom and saw his keys on the bed, which made me wonder why he would walk to work on such a cold day. It was December 1st. As I started leaving the bedroom again, I noticed his laundry basket was missing, so I went to the laundry room. It wasn't there either. When I returned to the bedroom, I noticed his closet was empty. I called him to see where he was and asked if he had moved out. Of course, his answer was yes. Come to find out, he had met a woman at his job who works for one of those shopping apps where people buy and deliver groceries. He had moved in with her. Over the next 6 months, he called almost daily and would say things like, "Our marriage will survive this. Just give me time." He even told me he would be mad if I began dating. During one of our phone calls, he told me he wasn't happy with her and was going down to Florida to visit family. He said he wanted to come back to me when he returned to Michigan. The plan was this: he would pack things that he couldn't live without, but leave items at his new girlfriend's house to make her think he was coming home to her. He planned on giving his 2-week notice while he was gone and intended to look for another job when he came home. By this time, I knew I didn't want him back. I had found my self-worth again and made new friends with neighbors once he was gone. Come to find out, nobody liked him. Even the women at the gas station across the street told me how he flirted with them when he came in. Even an elder at my church found out he was cheating but didn't tell me because she didn't want to hurt me. So I went to the courthouse, got a divorce package, and filled out all of the paperwork. Where I live, I was able to serve him myself. I decided that since he chose to end our marriage while working at the store, I would officially end it there. So the day before he was supposed to fly to Florida, I made sure I looked really good. New hairstyle, makeup, and my outfit was sexy. I went to his job, found him, and handed him the divorce papers. I told him that he was wrong. Our marriage wasn't surviving this. You should have seen his face. He was actually upset, with tears in his eyes, and for a moment I felt bad. Then I reminded myself of what he had done to me. He didn't just leave me in the middle of the night. He stopped talking and doing things with my grandson, who thought Grandpa was the greatest. He left me in a house that I couldn't afford without him, and I would have been homeless if my church hadn't paid for an apartment. He told me women were stupid. He actually thought he could come home as if nothing had happened. That was one thing he said to me on the phone because I never brought up the past. Last week, 6 months after our divorce was final, my car was repossessed. When we were together, he took out 2 loans and I agreed to use my SUV as collateral because I never pictured my life without him. He stopped paying on his loans, so they took my car. I wasn't notified because they sent him the letters. They wanted me to pay off his loans to get it back. I burst out laughing and said that would never happen. So my question is, was I the antagonist for serving him the way I did? User Greta Smith said, "My dad tried this with my mom. He thought he could come back too. My mom packed up the house, sold or gave away what she didn't need, and moved my brother and me to another place. He had no place to come back to. Unfortunately, my stepmother put up with him doing this multiple times until he died last year. I'd go over to his house for custody, and it would be a new place with a new woman more than once." To this, OP said, "My dad also left after 46 years, and when my mom was terminal, he tried to come back. She said no, she liked being the other woman for once. After she passed away, he left his girlfriend, who was 10 years older than me." User God's Girl said, "Not the asshole for serving him. My only question is, why did it take you so long?" To this, OP said, "I felt broken at first, then my niece passed away. After that, my own health fell apart, and I was in the hospital for 31 days, so I had to build my strength back up. I also didn't want to tell my congregation that I was getting a divorce, but mainly it was about my health." User My Best Friend said, "You are not the asshole. You are a strong woman of faith. What you did was not the best, but it was not the worst either. As you know, Jesus is about kindness and forgiveness, not about trying to be cruel. I'm not saying to take him back, no way. Now that it's over and he is no longer your spouse, don't worry about what happened in the past. Move on with your life. Forgive him for his sins and let the hate and hurt go from your heart. Go find yourself someone who is a godly man, someone who loves you and will be faithful." Update. Here's what happened since my post. I found out where my car was being held. When I went to their website, I discovered that it's also the location where they sell the repossessed cars during an online auction. They hold it every Monday for 24 hours. I called and asked if I could have my belongings out of it, and they said yes. When I arrived, they had my things in a bag, including my license plate. I registered online, and this past Monday, I began bidding on my car. I ended up buying my car for $3,000. When I showed up to get my car, the people laughed and said I'm not the first person to do this. I put my plate back on and came home. Now, I know the bank can still come after me for the balance, but I honestly don't care if it hits my credit report. I don't use credit cards, and in October, my daughter closed on a brand new house. I had no other bills except for my cell phone and utilities. I'm now living with her and my grandson. I was lucky enough to have enough time in to retire when my muscular dystrophy began causing more health issues, and that money goes to my other bank. My mother-in-law was happy to give me his new address so I can sue my ex for my half of our income tax return that he kept last year. She's even having us stay with her when we visit Florida during my grandson's spring break. She's still calling Ed's girlfriend Teresa, Trina, Tracy, everything except her name, which does start with the letter T. I love this woman. This third post was made in the AITA subreddit by a user named Anna Maria about a week ago. The post is titled AITA for breaking up with my boyfriend because he lost my dog. It is my first time posting anything on here, and English is not my first language. Please keep in mind that I have been crying for the past 2 days, so I apologize for any mistakes. I and my boyfriend have been together for almost 4 years. We get along okay for the most part. Things like him losing something of mine have happened, but never to this degree. I have had my dog Milo for her whole life. We grew up together, and it's really hard for her to trust other people. She has always been an anxious girl, but she is the light of my life and was always by my side, even on my worst days. 3 years ago, I introduced my boyfriend to my family, which is just my mom and Milo. He and my mom got along okay, but he did not acknowledge Milo in any way, which is fine. I did not expect him to be all over her, considering she does not like that, but I still found it pretty strange because he said he absolutely loved dogs. To be honest, I believed that because he would always pet dogs when we were outside. Any interaction for the past 3 years with her was limited, but Milo warmed up to him. She would greet him, go to him for pets, and accepted him on our daily walks. 1.5 years ago, Milo got sick. She had a tooth infection, which was pretty bad. Her whole right eye was swollen shut. I asked my boyfriend to take us to the vet because I don't have a car. The vet took care of the infection, gave me some antibiotics to give her every day, and instructions to clean the wound that was left after the vet cleaned the pus. For a couple of weeks, I did not hang out that much with my boyfriend. I took care of Milo because she was not feeling great. One thing that stood out to me was the fact that he seemed pretty pissed every time I brought her up, talking about her progress. Looking back, that should have raised some red flags, but I guess I brushed it off. Now that I have given you the short version of the past, this is what's happening in the present. I planned with my mom to go on a short vacation to visit my grandparents. I was talking to my boyfriend about this trip, and I told him who would take care of Milo, my best friend Alex. My boyfriend then offered to take care of her. He was mad that I did not come to him first, stating that he loves Milo and wants to go on walks with her. I reluctantly agreed, considering this love for her was out of the blue. The trip was supposed to last 3 days. On day 2, I was talking with my boyfriend on the phone, and he casually said that Milo really likes to stay outside. For me, this felt off, so I asked him what he meant. He left my sweet girl outside for hours at a time alone and would check up on her hourly. Mind you, I live in an apartment and I don't have a backyard. My mom and I left as soon as I told her, and we arrived back home at around 9 p.m. Since then, I have blocked my boyfriend on everything and have been searching for my girl. I have printed posters, gone out every day for hours at a time, and posted about her in Facebook groups around my area. Now he and his friend group say I'm an antagonist because I have put my dog above my boyfriend in all of our 4 years of relationship. I know for a fact this is not true, but I don't have anyone else to ask besides people who are really close to me and would be biased. I am sorry for the long post. My mind is all over the place. Update. A lot of people asked me for an update. I should have waited until I got some rest, but you all were so helpful, and you deserve to know how this ended. I have added a summary at the bottom, and please excuse any mistakes. I am exhausted. My ex came today to get his stuff, and some of you might be happy about what you are about to read, but he did not get a single thing back. When he saw me, he started begging me to forgive him, and thanks to you again, I agreed to forgive him if he told me the truth. He just looked me straight in the face and said, "If I'm going to be honest, you won't forgive me." My heart broke all over again, thinking about the worst of things. When he saw me cry, he told me I should get over it because she was already old, but if I really wanted her back, I should get back with him. And when he trusts that I really forgave him, I could see her again. I was exhausted, hopeless, and angry. Even though I wanted my girl back, I could not look at him, let alone be with him for however long he thought it would take me to forgive him. So he left without telling me a single thing about Milo. I got a call a few hours later from a lady who found Milo on the side of the road. She told me she would wait for me to come because when she wanted to pick her up, Milo seemed to be in pain. When I arrived and saw her laying there, all my emotions flooded over me. My sweet baby, even though she looked so different, was alive. She is now staying overnight at the vet. She has 2 broken ribs and is dehydrated. If everything goes well, she will be home soon. I appreciate each and every one of you who took the time to guide me through this nightmare. Thank you again. I will be pressing charges. User Dryad said he abandoned her dog and most likely kicked her, and when he said if they got back together, she could see her again. That was as good as a confession in my opinion. Call the cops. User Tiny Break said he's pretty lucky OP didn't tie him to a chair, gag him, and torture him until he gave up the location. It might sound extreme if you don't have a pet, but for a lot of us, there is nothing we wouldn't do to protect them. User Desperate Pear said, I'd like to break every one of her boyfriend's ribs with a baseball bat, then break his kneecaps and leave him on the side of the road. OP needs to report him to the police for animal abuse because he probably kicked her. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video, and thank you also to partner of the channel, Gamersubs. Use code DLAM to support the channel and get 10% off of your purchase, link in the description. I'm sure many of you like me have a hankering for daily caffeine, so go check them out. Lately, I've been a big fan of Titty Milk and Acid Rain, but they've got dozens of other flavors for y'all to try out. Anyway, thanks again for reaching the end, and I hope you all have an amazing passage of the next 24 hours.